We live in a world of perpetual warfare and crime and corruption. Protest after protest, they continue to go perpetually. It seems that we need a different approach. How does the Venus Project approach this?
If you really wish to bring an end to war, poverty, hunger, and most crimes, what we have to do eventually through education is declare all of the Earth's resources as the common heritage of all the world's people. I see that as the only means. So this is what we have to strive toward. I don't say this can be accomplished in one swoop. It's a slow process of education.
Why do you propose such a radical change?
Well, I would like to see an end to war, poverty, unnecessary human suffering. And I can't see it within a monetary-based system. I see constant repeat of the same series of events: war, poverty, recession.
Is monetary economics at the root of the problem, and can it be fixed? If it can't be fixed, why not?
Frankly, within this system, in order to survive, you have to submit to the methods of this system. A lawyer is not out there to help you always. There's money in it for the law firm. In other words, the motivation is not what you would call based on human concern. It's based on the bottom line. The motivation in most industries, the bottom line is profit, not the betterment of humanity. And they would feel, well, that is a byproduct of this system. I don't believe that. It's that the rules of the game were invented so many years ago, they no longer fit the economic circumstances of the times. What we would like to do is update our system so that it fits the new technology.
Would the election of people with higher moral content solve the problem?
No, because even if you succeeded in electing people of unquestionable moral character, if we ran out of resources, there'd be lying, cheating, stealing, and artificialities. It isn't moral character that we need. It's the intelligent management of the Earth's resources. The real future depends on our ability to solve scarcity problems, overcome those problems through our own creative ingenuity.
What is a resource-based economy? And how does that compare with a monetary-based economy?
In a monetary-based economy, we use money as a medium of exchange. Now, money doesn't represent our capacity to produce. It just represents a method designed hundreds of years ago and established within the system. In the monetary-based system, it's wealth, property, and power. And that's the main directive. Now, today we say, how much will it cost? That is really the question. The real question is, do we have the resources to build that kind of project? Yes, we do. Do we have the money? No, we don't. But we have more than enough resources available to build anything we want to build. If you have difficulty with that, consider this. Suppose all the money in the world disappeared tomorrow morning. As long as there are farms, water, building material, we can build anything we want to build. It isn't money that people need. It's access to resources. In other words, it was necessary 100 years ago to use a monetary system for the distribution of products. Today, we have the technology to make those things available. What are we chiseling off each other for? A resource-based economic system does not use money, barter, trade, or any of the older systems that were prevalent. It's based on designing a culture that fits in with the carrying capacity of the world's resources. Anything else other than that will not work. It's like sending people to the moon without water and without food, operating on the assumption that the moon will provide. It has to be based, all science and technology must be based upon resources. And without resources, whatever planning you do, if you don't have the resources, is invalidated. So the resources must coincide with the industrial potential.
How does that offer a different approach to our society?
It would change the basic outlook of people. There would be no such thing as unemployment, no such thing as war, no police, no prisons, no banks, no money, but people would have access to new housing, education, health care, and all of the things we don't have access today without putting out a great deal of money.
If I read you correctly, you're talking about no money, no credit, no borrowing, no debt, no bartering. Where's the incentive?
No war, no territorial disputes, crime reduction by about 90%, the end of fear of economic deprivation or losing your home or illnesses which you cannot afford economically to take care of. All that comes to an end. If that isn't a good enough incentive, I don't know what is. A lot of people are brought up to believe that money is the driving force that generates incentive. It also generates incentive for corruption, embezzlement, taking care of your brother-in-law, unfair practices, racial discrimination. So I'm saying that, yes, money does produce incentive, but it also produces all the other factors, which are generally left out. I would say the people we remember in history are not the people that made a buck or made lots of money. They are people that have given their lives to benefit the lives of other people without financial gain. So I'm saying the real people that we admire are the people who did public works, not because of monetary incentive. I'm afraid of people that do things for money. I don't feel secure about it.
What about human nature?
I think that environment shapes values and behavior. Genetics, to a certain extent, set the propensity, but they do not give us a value system. Genetics is not responsible for greed, bigotry, racism, prejudice. All that is learned. So if you don't alter the condition that generates that, I don't see a solution. What the Venus Project advocates is the redesign of our culture so that those conditions no longer exist.
And what about scarcity? Can that be eliminated?
Do we have enough resources to satisfy the growing population in the world? Yes. Today we have more than enough. And it's incontestably proven that we have more than enough. It's just that the way we manage our resources are wasteful. We change the design of automobiles every year so that people will buy new cars. We change the spring fashion, the fall fashion, the winter fashion, so you will buy things and constantly be involved in purchasing things. So we will engineer, innovate, and make newer things designed not to wear out and break down.
What does the Venus Project represent?
One world working in one direction, the intelligent management of resources and upgrading the standard of living for all the world's people, with profits to none and service to everyone.
So how do you envision a transition into this type of system?
If you keep bringing in machines and replacing human beings, the majority of people throughout the world will not have the purchasing power to buy goods or services. This will bring an end to the old monetary system. I would see economic collapse as the only system that'll bring people around to say that, gee, I see that the people I've elected into political office are not competent enough to get us out of this problem, and they'll be looking for other possible alternatives. The more people know about it, the more likely that it may be installed. The Venus Project does not say this is what the future will be. All it says is this is what the future can be. And that is what the Venus Project has to offer. The methodology of how to achieve a higher standard of living for all the world's people without the creation of uniformity or standardization or subservience to an elite form that manages government.
What problems stand in the way of us implementing this type of transition?
Traditions, habits, indoctrination, propaganda. We are all propagandized to accept our system as the best system. We are all given stories about the culture, our cultural history, and which has left out the detrimental aspects. All societies tend to support the dominant values of that society. There's no such thing as an objective society. If there were, you couldn't have German scientists, American scientists, British scientists, Dutch scientists, French scientists working in serving their government. Real science has no allegiance to government. It only has allegiance to methodology. So this is not a loyalty to the Fresco system or loyalty to the Venus Project. I'd be against that. You have loyalty to the earth and all the people that live on it.
Who decides what the future will be?
I don't think anyone ought to decide what the future will be, but we ought to decide where it is that we wish to go and what kind of world we wish to live in. And do we have the facilities and the resources to build such a world? The answer to that is yes, we do have the ability and the resources to build such a world. There is no way for you to make it on your own. Either we think globally or we perish individually. We welcome your criticism of the Venus Project. We welcome the participation of everybody and the contributions. We have no idea of what the ideal society would be, nor do we entertain such views as utopia. We feel that all systems will constantly change to whatever conditions are necessary to fit the needs of the times. We have no fixed blueprints, so we invite participation and we invite recommended changes, because the history of civilization is the story of change.
The entire money-structured and materialistic-oriented society is a false society. 10 or 15 years from now, our society will go down in history as the lowest development in man. We have the brains, the know-how, the technology, and the feasibility to build an entirely new civilization.
You believe that we teach competition that is not bred into some...
Competition is dangerous, socially offensive, considered right and normal, because you are brought up to that value system. What kind of competition did Jesus have? What kind of competition is there in your body? Suppose your brain said, I'm the most important organ, and the liver said, I am, and I want to go a free enterprise system. You'd rot away in a month if every organ of your body went out for itself. Socio-cyberneering does not appeal to governments, to private enterprise. We're going to do this thing just as the automobile phased out the stagecoach, just as television stepped in and phased out the old vaudeville and the old motion pictures. That history and technology is respecters of no society, no individual opinions, but it moves on, and we've got to be prepared to face the future.
In your society, there are no mayors of cities.
There are no mayors, there are no politicians, and you don't have to fill out any forms to go to the arts center or music center, and you go to a university whether you can afford it or not. You don't have to use any of the systems today. Let me briefly say this. You have a bumper in front of your car, behind your car. But your society, your car's hit on the side also. You have safety belts and harnesses in your car. But that assumes that you're going to be hit by the rear or in front. If you're hit on the side, you go right through the side of the windshield. What good are these approaches? They are designed by men that are cerebral insufficients. You've got to design a society with a bumper all around the car, phase out human drivers, put electronic guidance systems in cars, or eliminate the automobile and design a holistic transportation system. We must put our mind to this as we do to put a man on the moon. We must put our mind to the social problem. We wish to get away from politics. We wish to get away from the old world method of solving problems. This is clean sources of power. By utilizing the natural heat of the earth, that is volcanic energy, or the magma, or the molten lava under the earth, of which there are approximately 500 potentials, if we tap a mountain in Hawaii called Mount Aloha, we can get enough power to electrify the world. We can get enough power from that volcano alone. We have 500 potential volcanoes we can harness. We can use that natural heat from the volcano. No smog, no smoke, no dirt, no gases, no fuels, no oil spills, and no more burning of fuels in any city to generate power. If Japan used Fujiyama, they don't need to burn oil. They don't need oil. All of that heat is sitting there. 20 million years of power right under the Earth's surface. In fact, you don't even need to use fusion power or nuclear power. And it's easy to tap, and it's clean and available. As soon as we make up our minds to put scientists, rather than on weapons, nerve gas, on harnessing the earth power that is already here. It would take 10 years to change the surface of the earth, to rebuild the world into a second Garden of Eden. The choice lies with you. The stupidity of a nuclear arms race, the development of weapons, trying to solve your problems politically by electing this political party or that political party, that all politics is immersed in corruption. Let me say it again. Communism, socialism, fascism, the Democrats, the liberals, we want to absorb human beings. Women's lib, all organizations that believe in a better life for man. There are no Negro problems or Polish problems or Jewish problems or Greek problems or women's problems. They're human problems. To come into socio-cyberneering and take your part and function. We are not concerned with the divisions of segments of society.
No control of population?
Population control is dependent upon education. We feel an educated population needs no control.
You wouldn't stop sex?
No, sir.
Good move, Jacque.
Somebody said, do you think machines will have emotions someday? No, they won't, because it serves no purpose. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. If a woman's in an automobile accident with her kids in the back of the car turns over, and the gasoline starts flowing toward the engine, which is hot, it'll explode. If she says, oh my God, my kids are trapped in the car and there's current fires breaking out, I hope somebody comes to help. If she picks up wood, smashes a window, take the kids out, that's emotions converted to action. We're not so interested in emotions, we're interested in what you do with it. I think I can say this, that most people really don't know how to raise children. I wanted to communicate with my little boy when he was just a few months old. Now that's a time when you can't communicate with the language. But he was in the crib, and I put a ball painted yellow at one end of the crib, a real ball. And the kid saw it was stuck out, and he grabbed it. When he grabbed it, lights went on in a circle above the crib. So he let go. He was so amused by it, he let go. Then he saw, because it stopped. He didn't know why it stopped. But after he grabbed the ball 6 times, he knew that ball made the lights go on. Once that was established, I put a different color ball at the other end of the crib. And he crawled over before he can speak and grabbed that ball right away. But no lights went on the ceiling. He looked up, but on the wall, lights went up and down this way, see? So he knew that controlled the ceiling lights, this one controlled the wall lights. By the time he was 3 or 4 months old, he had 6 panels of lights. When he wet his pants, he'd squeeze one, Mom would come in and change the diapers. So, in other words, you children really want to know how the world works. The kids want to know everything, and we give them Jack and the Beanstalk and the Mickey Mouse Club. Kids really ready to learn how the body works. They want to know how the heart pumps blood through. Parents don't know those things. So when you say, should we educate our own children? You can't, unless you're educated yourself. You know, a priest said to me, I don't believe you. I know two people in the same home. One became a priest, the other a gangster. If environment is everything, how do you get those differences? And I said, the minute you treat one kid different than the other, you get the differences. You give kids Cinderella, artificiality, and you tell them to be honest. You always tell children to be honest. When they say, where do babies come from? The stork brings a baby. That's a lie. Then you ask the kids, say, Daddy, does Santa Claus climb down every chimney? You say, yes. That's a lie. And so we lie to kids, and then we tell them to be honest. You know, we lie about everything, almost everything. That's the kind of world we live in. It's so full of shit, and there's no bad language. It's just that way. So if you really want a better world, you have to know what makes criminals, what makes artists, what makes great painters. Environment makes a gangster or a priest. I went to a group of psychologists and said, do you believe there is such a thing as human nature? They said, yes, one is jealousy. I said, give me an idea of what you mean by jealousy. I always do that to try to understand the other person. He said, when I reach for my cat and put it on my lap, my dog growls. That's what I mean by jealousy. So I said, I'm going to show you some experiments that I've done. I had a dog and a cat. I always had a lot of dogs and cats and raccoons and other animals, and I'm interested in their behavior. I gave the dog fresh liver, a little bit, and then picked up the cat. Fresh liver, a little bit, and then picked up the cat. Gave the dog fresh liver, picked up the cat. I did that 20 times. And when I reached for the cat, the dog's tail would wag. So if it were inborn, he would still growl. You know what I mean? If it was conditioned, he wouldn't wag his tail when I picked up the cat.
We were wanderers from the beginning. When the fruits or nuts were ripe, we were there. We followed the herds in their annual migrations. We rejoiced in fresh meat. A few of us cooperating accomplished what many of us, each hunting alone, could not. Making it on our own was as ludicrous to imagine as was settling down. Working together, we protected our children from the lions and the hyenas. We taught them the skills they would need and the tools. Then, as now, technology was the key to our survival. It might be a familiar progression, transpiring on many worlds. A planet newly formed placidly revolves around its star. Life slowly forms. A kaleidoscopic procession of creatures evolves. Intelligence emerges, which, at least up to a point, confers enormous survival value. And then, technology is invented. It dawns on them that there are such things as laws of nature, that these laws can be revealed by experiment, and that knowledge of these laws can be made both to save and to take lives, both on unprecedented scales. Science, they recognize, grants immense powers. In a flash, they create world-altering contrivances. Some planetary civilizations see their way through, place limits on what may and what must not be done, and safely pass through the time of perils. Others, not so lucky or so prudent, perish.